As I ring the Tibetan bowl on this first Sunday of 2025, a quarter of a century since the millennium, I can't believe it. May we gather together to speak of possibility, to welcome a new year, a new story, and this new day as yet unwritten. Well, good morning and welcome, members, friends, and visitors, and those of you joining us on Zoom this morning, to the Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River. We come together as an intentional community, gathered around our mission to support each other's individual spiritual journeys and to inspire, inform, and support all who seek a more equal and just community. We are pleased that you are here with us this morning. I'm Nancy Holland, your service leader this morning, along with assisting Reverend Catherine, whose sermon today, will be on myth and mystery. We're grateful for Michael at the piano, John on the tech side there, and all those in your order of service, and Arlene, who volunteer each week to make these services possible. We thank you. I have a couple of announcements this morning. The Stewardship Committee, that time of year, here it is, first of the year, huh? Excited to kick off the pledge campaign at the February 2nd service. So please plan to attend this important event. There will be a lunch served following the service, and then there'll be a presentation of the projected budget for the fiscal year 2025-26. So we hope you'll all attend and learn about the future. Also an announcement from the Public Relations Outreach Committee. They're trying to put a new directory together, so they're still looking for pictures of new members and friends. If you would like to send your own picture in, you can upload it to the UUCR website, or David Beeler, our master photographer, will be here next week if you would like him to take a new picture of you. And I also wanted to let people know, it'll be in the Weekly Word, but we have kind of an unusual opportunity here. In January and February, Leica Lewis Cornwall, who's a UU candidate and chaplain, who has spoken here before but not recently, is offering us a 3-service look at the fates. The theme, sort of overarching for January, is stories. And you'll hear myth and mystery and stories today. And Leica is going to talk about, in ancient Greek mythology, 3 sisters, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos, who were said to weave the fates of all humanity. And in this series, she's going to explore those myths from the perspective of our modern times, considering how we experience and create our own destinies as individuals and communities. So that'll be January 12th, 26th, and the second week of February. So I hope you'll join us for those. It should be very interesting. And now, please join me as we light the chalice. The words are in your order of service. We light this chalice. Truth be with us always. We light this chalice for love. May the love for others be strong in our hearts. And now, Reverend Catherine. Okay.
So here we are modeling imperfection real time. In a moment, I'm going to invite our initial hymn, and I'm going to invite you to sing a song of power with me. And it's a song that I don't lead very often in congregations. Shortly after it was written, the leadership of the NAACP, speaking of 25 years into the new millennium, in around 1906, dubbed it the Black National Anthem. And it's a song I only use when that spirit can be honored. So today I invite us to listen, to really listen to the words calling us to lift every voice and sing, not just the pretty voices, not just the trained voices, not when times are good, but to lift every voice and sing. The words describe the pains and dehumanization and wounds of chattel slavery. The words that the civil rights activist James Weldon Johnston wrote were set to music by his brother. And the song holds myths and meaning-making of faith and emotional social connections of a people who resisted and survived. And that is a powerful myth. This song embodies the national story of America that started in 1619. And the musician John Baptiste described this song as a way to connect us to the history of all people who stand on the shoulders of and who have marched and fought and died for the freedoms we enjoy and are trying to improve upon. So in that spirit, beloveds, I invite us to rise in body or spirit, and please join in to lift our voices in hymn 149, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Again, good morning and welcome as we celebrate the start of this new year. And this evening is also 12th night, the end of Christmas in the Christian calendar. So I hope all your decorations are put away. You see ours just walked out the room a little while ago, as apparently it's a tradition that it's bad luck to have your decorations up past 12th night. So these weeks have been such a time of tradition, mystery, myth, and storytelling. And I remember as a child, maybe from like 8 to 10 or so years of age, my grandmother's sister, my great Aunt Mabel, who was a school teacher, loved kids but never had any of her own. She would tell me stories from Greek mythology whenever I was visiting. And I always asked for the story of Pandora in her box, fascinated perhaps by Pandora's curiosity, which was supposed to be a good thing, but that it could lead to such misfortune. I don't think my great aunt ever made the link to Eve's eating of the apple and knowledge, which some have in literature. But we just enjoyed naming, perhaps irreverently, trying to name all the bugs and diseases and disasters that poor Pandora had released on the earth. And unsurprisingly, I was also a great fan of Aesop's fables and fairy tales. The Princess and the Pea, The Ugly Duckling by Hans Christian Andersen, and the aptly named Grimm Brothers tales like Rumpelstiltskin, Rapunzel, The 12 Dancing Princesses, and the usual Snow White Sleeping Beauty. And my tween self loved Beauty and the Beast, which is still so current today. Does anyone know who wrote that one? I did. You're right, Gabrielle Suzanne Bardot de Villeneuve in 1740. So the Grimm brothers, Jacob and Willem, who lived in the late 1700s into the early mid-1800s, they collected stories from the people. The people of all classes, from the peasants to the aristocrats, and they wrote down the versions that they were told. And over time, they probably, as they compiled, they edited, and some assert that they also added religious, spiritual, some mythological, and even biblical motifs into these tales. But these myths, tales, stories, whatever you want to call them, have had a lasting effect for sure on Western art, literature, and our culture, and they're still vibrant today. Thank you to Walt Disney, right? Beauty and the Beast, the Marvel Comics superheroes, Nike Sports Company, named for Nike, the goddess of victory, and offering a shoe called Pegasus, who was the winged horse of Greek mythology. But why have these stories lasted so long? Why are they so durable? Myths and fairy tales are still important because they spark our imagination. And as children, these stories allow us to experience things in our minds before we have to face them in the real world. Back in the 70s, child psychologist Bruno Bettelheim, in his book, The Uses of Enchantment, The Meaning and Importance of Fairy Tales, posited that folk tales help children sort out their naturally chaotic and turbulent world. The fantasy and even the violence in so many of these stories parallels inner turmoil in the developing child, and the child identifies with the hero and usually sees that a good ending can result. Stories are where the supernatural and the mysterious can meet the troubles of the real world. In a fairy tale, anything can happen, any kind of creature can exist, and we can find solutions to those situations and in our real lives. Through imagination, we learn about our world. We can explore outcomes and possibilities, develop a moral compass, and find meaning in our lives. So may the stories continue. And now a meditation.
Let us take a breath and arrive. I invite you to settle in your seats and generally find a comfortable position. Maybe you let your eyes unfocus or gently float closed, deepening your breathing and opening your imagination. I invite you to shift your focus to your chest and feel your heart space. If as you breathe and settle, can you feel that open just a little? I invite us to open to mystery. We sing in our hymnals that life is a mystery. What mystery is calling to you today? Feel the wonder, the curiosity. Where is it in your body? What does it feel like? The mystery of life generally inspires awe for me. And awe pulls my attention and focus out of ourselves or our ego and small self into the wonder, appreciation, and beauty. What is inspiring awe for you today? See it in detail. Notice any scents that accompany your thought, any sounds. Bask in the awe, knowing the source of this feeling is in you too, in our interdependence. These feelings have happened all through human history, and many mysteries weren't explainable. Awe and mystery connected to other feelings, and people expressed them in stories. And these stories served various purposes, from connecting the community to providing a place to make meaning of the world that may not make sense, or to explain the unexplainable. Mythic stories connect us to those who came before and those who will come after. What myths are connecting to life for you in this moment, right now, in this story that is yet unwritten? What are the myths that used to work for you that you now appreciate differently? In the silence to follow, I invite you to reflect on the mystery of life, awe, and the myths we use to make meaning and create a sense of understanding.
May it be so. And now is the time in our service where we have the opportunity to share those joys or concerns that we're holding in our hearts. If you're on Zoom this morning, please feel free to raise the hand or unmute and let John know that you would like to share something with us. If you're here in person, please come forward and share what's in your heart, and I will light a candle. I would like to start by lighting one. It's a tough start of the year, right? With plane crash, horrible plane crash in South Korea, horrible actions in New Orleans and elsewhere.
Well, this Christmas, my daughter just moved to Florida, invited the family down to come and have Christmas with her. And we went down, Dave and I went down Christmas Day, and her sister was there, and her nephew was there, and the other nephew. And it was a great time. There's only one problem. She wasn't there. She had gone into the hospital the 9th of December to have a surgery on she had a adrenal gland removed because it's oversized. And apparently it made her produce more of these speed type cortisol and so forth. So she couldn't eat, she couldn't sleep, and thought the world was out to get her. So then, but after a while, the Saturday after she made it home, she made it back again. So she said, at least her paranoia is all over. But then we made the mistake of coming through Orlando Airport right at the end of the holidays. I have never seen so many people. I'll never ever go there again. So anyway, it's been an interesting time. But then David caught the Christmas Day caught a cold, which is He doesn't want to be around people too much right now. He still has it. So that's my tales of woe.
He feels better.
Well, mine is a joy, because one of the joys of Christmas, I always think, are Christmas books. And one of the joys of January is that the busyness of the holidays are over, and you can indulge yourself a little in reading those books. And in the spirit of what we're talking about today, this sounds like an advertisement, but I've just finished James. I cannot remember the name of the author. A number of copies came into our house because somehow we were all on the same wavelength. James, of course, is Jim, who in Huckleberry Finn joined him on the raft going down the Mississippi River. And in the spirit of what we sang today as our first hymn, I highly recommend it.
Well, for those joys and concerns shared and those we may still be holding in our hearts, let us take a moment of silence. Thank you for your generosity that keeps the programs at this church moving, and we are the ones that continue to keep the flame alive. Thank you. Next, we have a reading. The reading is in your order of service. It's entitled, How Does One Address a Mystery? By Reverend Dr. Gordon B. McKeeman. And I get to read the words in bold, and you get to read the rest. How does one approach a mystery? Cautiously. Reverently. hopefully. Quietly. But what shall I say? Anything. And at the end, say, Amen. Now, please rise in body or spirit and join us in hymn 205, Amazing Grace. We'll sing all, I think it's 3 verses. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious is that grace so near, the hour I first believed.
Mystery, awe, and myth invite us to open beyond our routine. Mystery invites us to open to what we do not know. Awe often recognizes powerful expressions, force, or image that's on another scale than we usually live. I used to think of it as grander, and then I saw a quark. Has anyone seen a quark? They're truly beautiful, and they're on a completely different scale from where we live. And honestly, I was awestruck. It's a subatomic particle that's part of, like, even beyond what we normally teach. There's a scale to awe. And awe often accompanies beauty for me. And finally, myth. In these stories, we're invited into meaning making, exploring deeper truths and mysteries. In many ways, like Amazing Grace, which we just sung, there's a journey, there's challenges, and there's a resolution. It's the mythic story. I imagine our ancestors standing in awe of the crashing sea surf, witnessing the power of a volcano or experiencing the sudden earth-moving power and randomness of an earthquake, or staring into the brilliantly glowing stars of the night sky and exploring the bounty of a forest with curiosity. I imagine our ancestors making meaning of births and deaths, bumper crops of abundance and lean years facing hunger. I imagine them making meaning of their local environment in a way that builds community, and doing so with stories. I imagine our ancestors pondering deep questions, the questions that we individually, as a society, face in every generation as our context shifts. And these stories connect us to each other. Questions like, who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? What comes next? These mysteries invite awe or an appreciation of something vast and powerful and life-impacting beyond ourselves and our personal power. These mysteries also invite myth and telling a story about those impacts. And when we appreciate that open, that infinite, and that divine, we stand in awe. And when we tell a story of the infinite or divine, we can either create or share a myth. So for the rest of today, I'm going to use the definition from the American Heritage Dictionary. It's a tradition, a myth, as defining a myth as a traditional, typically ancient story dealing with supernatural beings, ancestors, or heroes. So for many of us who may be a little on the pragmatic side, it doesn't have to be supernatural, right? As Nancy highlighted in her introduction. And it serves as a fundamental type in the worldview of a people by explaining aspects of the natural order or delineating psychology, customs, or ideals of a society. And I think that last part's going to be really important. Because myth is how a society explains aspects of the natural world and their things that they feel is important. And any given myth is created by the worldview of that society. So myth creates and is created by the societal worldview, particularly when faced with mystery and awe. When we encounter myths from multiple cultures, they invite us to open and help us recognize mystery that we may not even have known was there. Nancy named powerful fairy tales and how they taught social customs, ideals, beliefs, and how they came from segments within the society that the Grimm brothers occupied. We learn much from myths of our culture, society, and family. We can internalize that meaning making of our experiences and even build our personal myths that can become a sense of identity. So returning to the first song we sang today, Lift Every Voice and Sing, it holds the mythic meaning making of resisting and surviving slavery. Embedded in that song is the mythic connection to something larger than yourself, to endure the unendurable. The mythic connection to the divine within, so no matter what anyone says or does to you, your humanity is connected to the divinity, to those you love. Embedded in that song is the mythic connection to each other and to a deep community without judgment. connections that honor our ancestors and strive for something better for those who follow. And embedded in that song is joy, deep joy, as natural as the skies, the rolling sea, and a new day, because joy is our birthright. It's also the song of a people. Now, I didn't realize until relatively recent years that the humans who were stolen from the western coast of Africa were tremendously diverse and weren't a people. They didn't speak the same language or languages. They had different myths, cultures, norms, and more. Many practiced indigenous religions and were grounded in different places. Others were Muslim, and all had ways of making meaning that were disrupted and brought with them. It is through the resisting and surviving together that a people were born, a people that song is written for and about. Prentice Hemphill, author, activist, mother, podcaster, psychologist, and somatics practitioner, offers a perspective that one could speculate that part of what motivates the suppression of Black history is the threat that these stories pose to any unjust status quo. They show us real courage that has love and concern for humanity at its core and is capable of inspiring all of us. Now, that's a powerful myth. Pivoting to another culture, Valerie Kaur, lawyer, activist, author, and leader of the revolutionary love movement, described the context that led to the creation of the Sikh religion, and the culture in the Punjab area of India in her recent book, Sage Warrior. It happened at the cultural crossroads where the Hindu and Muslim people were traveling and encountering each other, particularly a number of Sufi Muslim mystics tradition and the Bhagats, or Hindu mystics, who worked to dismantle the caste system. They created a community and a culture of the people, by the people, and for the people, where all were welcome. All ate together, all sang together, and shared the holy text that were sacred poems, connecting each other and building powerful myths to hold a community, to weave a community. From the beginning, the Sikh religion proclaimed the equality of the sexes, and which in the 1600s, that's a big deal, right? And Valerie had to pause when her son asked, "Mama, if men and women are equal, then why are all the gurus men?" Valerie's book pauses, and the storytelling does a great job of imagining the historic Sikh feminine. The myth and foundation of the religion was partly shaped by the patriarchy of the larger society as it came out. And it also reshaped the psychology, customs, and ideals of society. That's the power of myth. The Sikh communities also came under attack from the ruling empire for undermining the unjust status quo. Encountering cultural stories have been very opening for me. I grew up in an Irish American household in the Northeast, and I can understand a lilting brogue all day long and twice on Sunday. If you're ever watching something and you're not sure, I got you. I sang revolutionary songs of my ancestors, some in Gaelic, and I grew up knowing that women were queens and pirate captains, maybe even doctors and homemakers too. All was on the table. Our ancestors taught resistance and community through myth, song, and dance. Irish step dance is an act of embodied resistance done in community. The myths of my ancestors brought the goddess Bridget into the way the Virgin Mary was described to me, as well as many saints. Earth-based traditions were part of our holy celebrations. Even if I didn't recognize it, those myths influenced the world I grew up in. And as part of industrialization, my ancestors became less attached to the land and thus mobile. They immigrated to the United States as part of European colonization, and the stories and cultures I grew up in were from these and other European sources, locally mostly Italy, or from the Grimm brothers. Immigration to the US and the legal system created whiteness and various definitions over the years, and that is a myth with powerful, lasting impacts, and a myth that is easily unseen by those of us who are white, unless we are open to the mythic stories of other cultures within our society. One of our congregants, as I was first getting to meet you, I talked about how Americans have an image of we don't think we have a culture, and we do, by the way. If you ever want to get an idea of what your culture looks like, the easiest way to do it is to look at how other people who are coming to visit you have to explore to learn, right? So the warnings for when people come to travel to us, some of the warning sites are like, hey, by the way, the beaches are not nude. Good to know. That's a cultural norm that we have that most of us don't recognize, right? And one of our congregants pointed out, actually, we have a culture, but we also don't have a culture, we have cultures, right? And that's part of what we we do here, is we create our own small culture, and we bring all the cultures that came with us into this community. Today, our myths and demographics are complexifying. Multiple cultures and mythic stories, both within our nation and globally, are intersecting in different ways. And it's happening both geographically and through technology, which has never happened before. The potential for learning and unlearning in this space is truly unsurpassed than any time in human history. We're invited to open to the mysteries around us and hold our assumptions gently, to greet other experiences with curiosity, music, and poetry. The myths of today are also shaped across generations. Generation Alpha is the most diverse generation in human history in the United States. It is also the most digital generation ever. Whole new myths are in play and shaping their view of the world. Memes are taking on mythic impacts for our children. We know the personal is political, and our personal myths, the factual stories, contribute to and can shift the myths of our families, society, and culture. This is amplified by technology, and it's continually changing. If we sit in the presence of mystery, open to what we don't know, we have an opportunity to learn and unlearn. When I teach OWL our whole lives, we spend a good amount of time on SEIDO, sexual identity, expression, and orientation. And I have to admit, there isn't a time I have worked with this curriculum and students where the terms and options haven't changed in some way. They've always taught me something. They always teach me something new. And gender unicorn is one of my favorite points of entry, which helps break down the gender identity, gender expression, sex assigned at birth, who we're physically attracted to, and who we're emotionally attracted to. Another one is the gingerbread person. And this is kind of dated, it's from 2017, but it's also completely non-copyrighted and out there for the world to use. And I really love how it makes it really big right here, just that identity does not equal expression, does not equal sex, gender, or orientation, right? And it highlights the other pieces for us as well. Now, that's a shift in our society. That's a way we've changed, that we have these conversations. And I really appreciate those true touchstones that directly challenge the myth of the binary, men, women, heterosexual, homosexual. If I learned nothing else and I promise I learned a lot in theological school, I learned it's to challenge the binary. It's usually wrong, at least incomplete. And as our description of gender diversifies, learning and unlearning happens, pronouns become part of our introductions because it matters. Hi, I'm Rev. Catherine Adams. I use she, her pronouns. These are practices that help us become a more inclusive community. Another way that can manifest is maybe pronoun prints. Helps if you can say it though, is pronoun pins, a visual representation moving saeo more firmly into the culture of a community. They're powerful signals that this is a place where your whole self is welcome. And the other part that some of the youth I've worked with have shared was, and what they really liked about it being a pin, right, was it could change. So if I am using he, him pronouns today, and tomorrow I'm choosing to use they, them, cool, because it's a pin, right? That flexibility was really important to them. And that's a mythic change for me at least, maybe not for you, that fluidity, that's really important to welcome all that people are. And that fluidity then impacts our society. Other myths may tell different tales and reflect a different worldview. I've heard a lot of myths that I know are not factual, and they kept going stronger and stronger. They aren't factual, but they hold a worldview or a perspective that kept feeding them. The myths and cultures we are exposed to shape us, and they shape our questions, and they shape our assumptions. Can we invite how we engage in the world in that ultimate concern? They can bring us back to those ever so important questions. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? And what comes next? Or if we shift out of, I mentioned American has a culture, we have a very independent culture. If we shift into a communal culture, who are we? Where did we come from? Why are we here? And who is the we that we're talking about? These are some of the ultimate mysteries we address cautiously, reverently, quietly, as our responsive reading invited, and we can address the mystery joyfully, open-heartedly, and curiously. We can love in awe of those who came before us and recognize that we stand on the wisdom of our ancestors and who loved us into existence, and in awe of those who are coming after us, both facing the world and creating whole new mythologies that are changing the world. And ancestry, by the way, I use in a very broad sense that may or may not be biology, depending on a personal context. Sitting in mystery is one of the most spiritual things we can do, because spiritual practice strengthens our ability to hold two opposing truths at the same time. And this opens our heart and to make meaning of our lives as we explore those deepest questions, experiences. It's enhanced by sitting in the presence of mystery and the mystery of life. As we sing, life is a mystery. Scientists can recreate the early Earth conditions and get the environment to make all the building blocks. But what exactly brought them together into life is a mystery. It's an amazing grace. It's the spirit of life. Thus, science is both a process, the scientific method for finding new information, and a myth. Science meets the definition we used earlier. For everyone whose reflexive response is, no, science is not a myth, it's science. I hear you. And for the first time, when the first time a mentor described teaching science as myth in class, I was honestly flummoxed. I think it's because we're taught that myths aren't true, And I absolutely believe science is true. It can also be wrong, and it's self-correcting. But for science, I can hold that it's not factual, and maybe it's just not factual yet, and it's how we're making meaning of the world. Does that make sense? I've also found it helpful to think of myths as links to mystery. And when I do that, it opens a little more room for awe and a reminder of the beautiful web of life. It is a privilege to be alive and in awe right now, living at the intersection of so many mythologies. The turbulence will help us build a beloved community as we live our values together. We do that starting here. We live it, and by doing so, we make it happen. We welcome all in covenant so we can be together in love, learning and unlearning all along the way. And may we be grounded in curiosity and awe of the myth and mystery of life. May our life be a dance of mystery, awe, and myth to the music of joy and curiosity. Now please rise in body or spirit and join us in hymn 311, Let It Be a Dance.
along today. Anyone have that? Catherine, would you tell us a little more about your OWL classes? Is that what you call them?
Our whole lives. It's the UU sexuality education class that starts the whole age spectrum from kindergarten through older adult. And I'm trained to teach 7th through 9th grade and the adult classes. And as part of that curriculum is part of where Saedo comes in. That and the other main concept is the circles of sexuality, which really, honestly, as my youngest came out recently, was like, Mom, y'all said this was a sexuality education class. They just taught me how to have relationships with people, which it is. It's that's a large part of it, and a fully grounded, whole-bodied relationship experience.
I like the idea of a myth. It's entertaining. We talk about the stories we tell children. It shows even bad things come out well in the end. But my problem is all myths should be benign. The myths that women can't do math and can't do science and black people can't take care of themselves are harmful myths. Mm-hmm. We need to be very careful about this with myths we perpetuate.
Agree, and that's really powerful to be able to first see them, right? The hard part about myths coming at such a young age is they found that worldview piece where we may not even realize that myth has become part of what we're facing. I think Linda had.
Thank you for all that. It was a lot to appreciate. And we have 3 grandchildren who are in that OWL age, 13-year-old girl and twin 10-year-old boys. And they were with us a lot this last week or two. And the myth that I didn't get, but I really worked at, is Minecraft. My kids, they only can play at limited times, and I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about or not, but there's this whole language, and there's goods, and there's good guys, and there's bad guys, and there's all in between, and it is a whole world. I really sat there long enough and watched enough variation and listened, and it's a world, and it's a resources, and it's not just good and bad, and it kind of got me fascinated. So anyway, don't think there's not myths right in your presence, because they are.
Solid agree, Linda. And Minecraft's a total myth that it's one of those internet myths, right? That way technology is shifting. And so it's not just the myths we knew and grew up with for those of us that are in my age group and before, right? So there's whole worlds of myth opening so when people are talking to us, it's really easy. I think my takeaway would be just don't assume we know what they mean. Right? Watch those assumptions, because I've honestly had a Gen Alpha person go, I can't talk to you in Gen Alpha. You're just not going to understand. I'll translate. And they did. And then they told me what they would have said in Gen Alpha, and I hate to say it, but they were right. I probably wouldn't have understood.
I kind of had the same idea that this lady was talking about. This Christmas, I realized that we have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old grandsons, and I have kind of avoided the old fairy tales because they're so violent. And our 9-year-old has enough fear going to sleep at night. But I realized that I've probably done them a disservice. And I'm also realizing that the video games that everybody plays now are replacing possibly the fairy tales that we knew. And I don't know anything about them. I'm totally clueless, like you, and I better get on board. And I remember my a 6-year-old grandson gave me a little Pokemon card. And I was like, he said, I want you to have this. And I said, okay. And he goes, you won't understand it, but I want you to have it. And it's true. But I find it's hard to take that leap into being interested in finding out what the video games are all about. But it sounds like they do have a good outcome, which the kids need to hear.
Our kids like to draw and stuff too, but now they're drawing all the characters from all the games. So get your kids to draw an avatar of you. And they'll ask what you like or what you don't like, and they'll put things in there and symbols on you as to how they see you. And it's fascinating. I mean, it's really, kids' brains are just totally different because of all this. And it's good. It's not bad. It's not as scary as I thought it was.
We have someone on Zoom who would like to speak. Deb,
Okay.
you're going to have to unmute yourself. No, you're still muted.
Tell her to hold the space bar.
Hold the space bar or what? Yeah, you still haven't gotten there. He's trying. Yeah, I have everybody's muted. But I can't unmute them. They have to be unmuted themselves.
John, you're on the space bar when you talk.
I can.
You can do that.
Any other thoughts while we're working on our tech side?
Technology is my friend.
Another thought.
So for those online, it said, there was a comment of technology isn't our friend, and a response of, well, that's a myth.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Deb. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So I wanted to first thank you for the lovely sermon. I feel like I've learned several things that now I need to research and understand more that I'd never even thought of. And the idea that, myth and science are both a human attempt to describe the world around us, both divine and mundane. And it just was a really lovely service. So thank you.
Annie?
Yeah. Yeah, this is just in reference to our guest was wondering about her grandchild who had some fear about going to sleep, and so she was questioning using the old fairy tales and not supplanting more fear. Is there any evidence that these new fairy tales are not filled with fear? I mean, it's my experience that so much of the new things that I'm seeing that the kids are watching, both videos and all kinds of games and whatever, are loaded with violence and fear. So I'm just wondering how the interplay is there.
My experience having a couple teens and a tween is that they learn what is fearful to them, and then they self-select. And if they've selected something that's fearful enough to them that causes them sleep issues, they don't select that again. So that's how my kids have gotten past that.
And myths evolve over time, right? So I actually just got to visit an entire museum that had a whole section on myth that described the natural phenomenon that was experienced in this place, and here's 3 different versions of the myth that emerged from it. And the original ones were, wow, graphic, violent, hard. And over time, they got gentler as they went through. And it was a really fascinating exhibit. I don't know that that's always true. But it was something that your comment inspired. But we are also at time. So with that, I will take us quickly into our closing words and invite us to bring our calm and open hearts into our larger community. Practice possibility, being fully present to each moment of this one wild, wonderful, beautiful life. Thank you.
Now we'll extinguish the chalice. The words are in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. It is to carry in our hearts until we meet again. Go lift it up, love us your way. Please join us for coffee and conversation in the lobby and have a wonderful week.